All right, you said your name was Jeff?
Jeff.
Jeff, awesome. Brandon, nice talking to you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so you said you got to stop for someone with a sign. So would you like to start or do you want me to start?
Well, you got the sign. I guess I'd like to hear your pitch first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty much, I believe everybody, and when I say everybody, I mean the vast majority, other than maybe a few exceptions, should be vegan.
Okay.
And I will start by defining veganism, and then I just want you to tell me what you disagree with. All right? So veganism is an ideology that rejects the commodification of animals, right? So that means we don't want to use them, abuse them, or kill them for food, clothing, entertainment, or anything else. So, and I'm assuming you're not vegan, right?
No.
No, okay. So if you're not vegan, what about that definition do you disagree with?
Well, I agree that would be the definition of vegan.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what do you disagree with in terms of, like, what do you not align with?
Well, in terms of abusing them, I agree. We should not abuse animals.
Okay.
In terms of killing them for food, I would say that's fine.
Okay. So let's start. Could we start there? Is that
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So, and that's pretty, normal within reason,
Yeah.
like against abuse, but okay with killing for food.
Sure.
So, I guess my first question is, can you maybe break down what abuse is to you?
I guess the abuse would be mistreating them outside of the purpose for which they were created. So I guess it might be helpful if I define my position a little bit more.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
that'd
you
be
know,
great.
kind of what I believe or why. So, in terms of animal rights, I don't think that animals have rights because I think rights are specific to humans, given by God, who created us. And so, animals can't, by definition, have rights because they're not unique creations with will, innate value, and innate purpose.
Okay.
But God has given us animals to be of service to us. And so if we're using animals to be of service to us, that's in line with God's design for them. If we abuse them, that's disrespectful of God's creation and not in line with the purpose for which God created animals.
Okay. All right. So coming at it from a religious angle, that's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, not specifically religious. I mean, yes and no, but more of a philosophical position.
Well, so philosophy implies logic, right? And not saying that your arguments are illogical, but I would say that most what you just described, your justification, is mostly faith-based. It's trusting or having faith in the religion you believe in. That, no?
No, not for me. It would be. But
you reference God.
Well, yes, because.
But God isn't proven, so you have to have faith, right? So you're talking about faith.
But if you say animals have rights, you're taking that on faith.
No. So I'll explain. Maybe I'll break down a little bit more. So, when we're talking about rights, you're exactly right. Nobody really, even humans, don't have rights, right? Now, again, to you, maybe God gave us those rights. But when we're talking about living in a society, we essentially have to grant each other rights, right? Just like how one race of people have taken rights away from another race, one sex of people have taken rights away from another sex. So we have seen in our society, in history, that rights can be taken away, right? So there's nothing like immune or nothing invincible about humans where our rights can't be stripped away, right? Same thing, I would make the argument that if there was another species, let's say an alien species that came down, that were as superior to us as we are to maybe cows, chickens, and pigs, right? They could easily strip our rights away, right?
So we've created the rights in your position?
Yeah. So like we've developed a series of rights, or we're continuing to evolve what rights mean to humans because of the harm that a lack of rights can cause, and vice versa. So what I would say is, to me, right, when I look at humans and other species of animals, because we are animals, to me, when we talk about extending moral consideration to other humans, most people think that's obvious, right? Right? Would you agree that humans deserve moral consideration?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll break that down a little further. When I say moral consideration, that we should care about how our actions impact other people, right?
Why, from your position?
Yeah. So why should we do that? Because humans are sentient, right? So we can feel pain, feel joy. We actually have a conscience. We can experience things, right? Very similarly, so when I asked, should we extend the moral consideration we give the humans to other species of animals, most people say no, or they come up with some justification for why it's okay for us to not. But the biggest reason why we do extend rights to humans is exactly why we should extend rights to other sentient animals, because they're sentient, right? I'm not here advocating for rights of microorganisms or fungi. We're talking about cows, chickens, pigs, dogs, cats, elephants, animals that clearly do communicate, clearly do have feelings. They feel pain, they feel joy, they have a conscience. And whether we could look at that observationally or scientifically, it is proven for the for the most part. So that's exactly why the moral consideration should be consistent. And anything arbitrary, like for example, well, it's okay to do what we do to cows because they're less intelligent, or because we can, or because they don't have language.
That wouldn't be my argument.
Right. I'm just saying any justification you come up with would be inconsistent, because if we extend that, if we put humans in that position, we would both agree that it's immoral to do that.
Do you differentiate between humans and other animals in terms of value and worth?
So I guess what I would say is, when it comes to value and worth, it depends what you mean by that. So when we're talking about differentiating between humans and other animals, in the context of if there was a burning building and I could save a dog or another human, I of course would save the other human for two reasons. Number one, they are part of my species, right? So I still have more empathy and more relation with that human.
More worth objectively, just more worth subjectively, because you find camaraderie as the same species, but ultimately not more worthwhile.
And I think this is where the maybe fundamental core difference. I've debated other Christian. I'm assuming you're Christian, right? Where morality is objective to you guys, right?
So, not all of it.
Okay.
But there are some moral objectives.
Okay, and we can get into that.
We have a basis for morality, and that's kind of why I brought up God in the beginning, because the question of rights is intrinsically tied to morality.
Sure.
Because asking somebody whether this is infringing on a right or violating a right is a moral question.
Yes.
And for me, if you start with the premise of no God, then I don't know what basis you have for any moral or right claim other than your own subjective and therefore arbitrary opinion.
Well, when you say your own subjective, therefore arbitrary, I could kind of break that down. But to finish what I was saying, it's they're part of my species, right? And also, I would say that humans have a higher. There's a hierarchy to sentience. So we do have a higher capacity to do more good as well as more harm, but we also have a higher capacity to do more good. We have a more conscious experience. So when it comes to saving, like same thing, if there was a gerbil versus a elephant, who I had to pick one, I would pick the elephant, right? So obviously we can differentiate with the hierarchy, but that doesn't mean.
Does that apply within humans as well? Humans with a higher capacity for intelligence, so mentally challenged people would be.
That's a good question. If there was a fire and I had to save one, I'd probably save the more mentally capable person. Yeah,
so
probably.
My position would be that the mentally challenged person and the non-mentally challenged person are both equally.
No, but
valued.
if you had to pick one, look, if I could save both, of course I'm going to save both. I don't think we should be harming anybody, but including other sentient animals, obviously mentally handicapped people.
Your answer to that question is on the premise that those with more intelligence are more valuable, which is why you would choose them.
Not more intelligence. So it's a hierarchy of sentience, but also it's also the capacity of your ability, right? And in this hypothetical, because you can't take it out of the context.
Your hypothetical response is based on that view that the one with the higher intelligence would be more valuable.
Or the higher sentience, or the higher capacity to do good. Yeah, not more valuable, but if I had to pick one, I would pick one.
If you're going to save the one, then they would be more valuable.
But which one would you choose?
I wouldn't be able to make a choice based on. I would just.
But that's a cop out.
No. I'm saying I would just choose the one that I just went for. It wouldn't be based on that.
Okay, but so when you have to make a judgment call, right? When let's say you have an 80-year-old woman in the burning building or a 5-year-old child, right? When you have to make a judgment call, you don't just go and pick a random one, right? I'm sure you would sit there and evaluate, okay, who has the more capacity to life? Who can potentially do more good? Who has more sentience? Who has more consciousness?
But that wouldn't be a question of value.
So again, all I said when you asked me, do I differentiate with value? I said, in a circumstance where I had to pick one. what I was going to continue saying is, in terms of the infringing of rights, or in our practical world, I don't think we should be differentiating or valuing any other sentient animal from one another, right? So in terms of a dog, in terms of anything other than I have to pick one to survive, or in that crazy scenario.
Yeah, right. Which are kind of unfair.
I don't think that a dog has more value than a human, in terms of to where we can kill the dog and eat it for a burger, and not the human, right?
Yeah.
So,
do they have any more do humans have more value than dogs in any sense, in your opinion? Other than being in the same species?
Not a morally relevant value. No, when we're talking about morality, when we're talking about harm, that dog can experience tremendous amounts of harm and suffering, as well as tremendous amounts of well-being and joy. Maybe not on par with a human, but in terms of moral relevance, moral value, they are equal to us. That's what I would say. And same thing with cows, chickens, pigs, all other sentient animals. But back to the question, because there was a couple things, right? You said you're not sure without God, you're not sure what the basis of morality would be for atheists, for example, right?
I'm sure that they would have an answer for it. I've never heard one that's satisfactory.
I've got an answer.
All right, let's hear it.
So we can break down, and I'd also like to break down this whole objective morality, but I'll go with mine, and then we could go. So where do we get our morality from, right? As you may know, but I could explain anyway. I'm sure we can observe throughout history, morality has evolved tremendously, right? So we went
different perspectives on it, sure, depending on the society you talk to.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing, right? When you say that morality is objective, you're saying that objective means absent of a mind, right? That means that.
No,
so what does objective mean?
So if for me, there's only two explanations. Either human beings have created morality, right? It's a construct of human beings,
yeah.
Which means that depending on which person, society, culture, person in power you talk to, they've defined what's morally correct and incorrect for that situation.
Well, it's up to logic and reason to actually push back and argue.
Would still be subjective.
Subjective, yeah. But I'm saying it's not like somebody ultimately rules. Yes, that could happen, but that's how morality has evolved. From my perspective, is through logic and reason.
And that's one option, right? And I understand the arguments behind that. The other option would be that something outside of humanity has created and defined morality.
But here's my question. So what is your definition of objective?
It would be absolute.
So you're saying that no matter what, it exists, right? Essentially? So like gravity, for example, right? When I drop the ball and it falls to the ground, no matter if we have a definition for it, no matter if we have it.
I like to simplify it as in like 2 + 2 is 4.
Okay.
Is chocolate or vanilla better?
Okay.
Chocolate or vanilla being better would be a subjective opinion.
Yeah. So here's my question.
Equal 4 regardless of our opinion.
Sure. So here's my question. When you're saying that morality is objective, but then you're going to reference God, right, or religion.
Or just anything outside of humanity that created and defined it would allow for the possibility of it being.
But here's the thing. Somebody, whether it's human or non-human, there had to be a mind that came up with that morality. So per the whole religion God thing, you could say morality is objective, but in reality, that is still a subjective morality, whether it's Jesus Christ or God's, whether it's Allah, whether it's whoever the Jews believe in.
Yes, but if he created everything, including morality, then that would lend that being objective as opposed to you and I who are...
But again, he still had, so like you said, he had to create it, right? So if he's creating it, it's his mind that's actually coming up with it.
Or his nature that morality flows from.
And I think, so I guess this is where we're going to lead.
Seems like reason and logic. If that would be objective and not just something subjectively that we can, disagree or agree on, right? Like a square being a circle is illogical. That's not a subjective opinion. It's an objective reality outside of us that we can get in touch with.
Yeah, in a way, like geometry and stuff.
Right.
But
so for me, morality is in a similar vein where we can disagree on it or we can get in touch with the reality of morality outside of us.
Sure, but here's the problem that I have with that argument, right? The reason why I think morality has to be subjective and it has to be able to evolve outside of a book that was written thousands of years ago or a commandment or, whatever, something that isn't actually proven, visible, right? Obviously you need faith, is because that has the potential for a lot more harm than logic, reasoning, and actually being able to evolve morality. For example, even today's day and age, I'm not gonna not saying you are one of these, but I think you know where I'm heading. In today's day and age, a lot of Christians are still anti-LGBTQ+, right? They're homophobic. A lot of them are racist because of things that are written in the Bible, right? That's true, but if you look at I'm sure if we did a percentage, a lot of them would be religious, right?
You look at secular China, and they're pretty anti-LGBTQ without religion, right?
I don't know if they're without religion. Actually, a lot of people in China are Christian, but yes.
The government.
Yeah, of course. There are, but I'm talking.
Just saying anybody can be against anything.
Of course. It's not that atheists can't be racist, or obviously. But
I understand, but I would say that a Christian who's racist, those are contradictory terms. Because if you look at what Christianity is, if you read the tenets of Christianity, the New Testament mainly, you can't find any evidence that we're called to be racist.
Okay,
right?
so what about homophobic?
Depends on what you mean by it.
So when it says in the Bible that two men can't mate or can't marry, that's you wouldn't. So and the thing is, right?
Well, I would say if God, again, if we talk about sexuality as a human creation, then we don't really have a basis for saying any sexual act is immoral, because it would be our opinion on what's moral and what's not about it.
Okay.
But if there's a God who created sexuality for a purpose, then anything outside of that purpose would be sinful. Doesn't mean we dislike them, because my sexual sin is just as, right? I'm a married man, but you're a guy, you know that just because I'm married doesn't mean my wife is the only woman that I'm sexually attracted to, right?
Sure.
But if I have sex outside of my marriage, then that's bad.
Sure.
So
but I guess
don't hate people that use their sexuality against God's purpose, because I do it myself, right?
Well, so I guess I think we're going to run into a very big core fundamental difference, because what you're saying is, well, if I have sex outside of my marriage, it's bad because God, right? And what I'm saying is...
Because God created and defined my sexuality for a purpose, and anything outside of that purpose would be by that definition.
But what I'm saying, we can logically reason and come to terms that, okay, I'm in a relationship. I am telling them that I'm with that person. They're making that commitment to me. If I go outside of that, I'm causing harm to that person.
Depends on your definition of harm, right?
Well, it depends on the relationship, right? Some people are polyamorous, some people are monogamous. What I'm saying is, I think you can logically reason, right, what's committing rights violations, what's causing harm to the other
Depends
person.
on our definition of harm and what's not great, right? I would say that there's a lot of people that think having sex with a lot of people before they're married doesn't cause harm. But I would disagree with that. I would find it.
Well, but you could break that down. How does it cause harm?
Oh, well, you can have unwanted pregnancies. You can have...
No. So, but if we test your logic, right, assuming that no STDs, no pregnancies.
Big assumptions.
You're not. No. But people do it, right? So, saying that something has the capacity to cause harm, and saying that something ultimately causes harm due to objective morality, very two different things, right? So, like, you can have casual sex with there's two consenting adult parties where there is no harm being caused.
If there is no God who created that, then
but that's what but I'm saying logic. Forget about the God. Like, forget about the faith for a second.
Based on your philosophical presupposition that there is no God, and therefore you and I can create our own sense of what causes harm.
But just with logic, I understand like like you're saying. Well, in the book it says red is bad, so red is bad. But what I'm saying is if we can break down that red isn't always bad and red can be good, then you can't just stick to the book, is what I'm saying.
But it's not based on the book.
Casual sex is based on the book. That's why you're saying it's immoral, because in the Bible it says you can't have casual sex.
Yeah, but that stems from the idea that our sexuality was created for a purpose. So
right. But it's a circular argument, right?
No. It's providing. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go for it.
You've been very respectful.
I don't mean.
I like the conversation.
Me too. I love this so much.
I find that. Kind of lost my train of thought. All right. So, if there is no God, then you can come up with a basis for what sexual activity is wrong and what's not based on your own subjective view, though. But if you look at it, it's still dependent on which person you talk to, in what culture, in what time period, right? So you don't have a basis for objectively saying this is absolutely wrong.
Right, but people do that anyway. So, like, for example,
but they don't have a basis for it.
But that's where logic, reasoning, education comes in. But again, when we're talking about a book, so if there's a book, right? Let's say there was a book that's, and this is not any religion. Let's say there's a book that said child pedophilia is moral, right? Or I guess pedophilia. Let's say there was a book that said pedophilia.
That's the definition.
Yeah. Let's say there was a book that said pedophilia is moral. Yeah. Totally okay, right? And that was written 10,000 years ago, right? And you had a group of people that said, this is the word of God, right? We have some kind of evidence, but it's not really proven. It's kind of shady. It's mostly faith-based. This is the word of God. If you're using logic and reasoning, you can break down why that's immoral. But if you're going by the book, you kind of, if you're really a part of that religion, you have to follow the teachings of that religion. So what I'm saying is, in the book, right, let's say they say 10,000 years, I don't know when the Bible was written, but thousands of years ago, when they said that, oh, we have dominion over animals, that's a very different, and I'm going to circle back to the topic, that's a very different world than what we're living now. So when we have 80 billion sentient animals that are kept in factories, that are killed unnecessarily, when we have the food security to eat vegan all year round, to say that, well, God said we have dominion over animals in a book thousands of years ago, I would say that that needs to evolve to now, okay, we have no necessitation. There's no it's not necessary to do what we're doing. And I think that God, if he exists, if he doesn't, whatever, I think he would want us to not be killing 80 billion animals, causing so much suffering and harm.
Why? Why do you think that God would think that?
Well, two reasons. Number one, and I'm very vaguely with the literature, but number one, I do know Garden of Eden was vegan. So before they sinned, Garden of Eden was completely vegan. It was only after sin came about.
In terms of the killing, yes, because there was no death.
Right.
But in terms of using animals for our...
Well, they weren't eating animals before they sinned.
No, right.
Yeah.
But I thought you said vegan was more than just killing. It was like using them for entertainment.
Right, but if we're talking about Adam and Eve, what would they do? They're not gonna. There was no circuses back then. Like, what are they?
Yeah, but they could have used animals for their benefit in some capacity.
I mean, they could have had sex with them, but that's about it.
I think that definitely would have got it.
But that's the thing. So, like, Garden of Eve is vegan. Not to mention, like, there doesn't actually say anything specific about you have to eat animal products. It does say we have dominion, right? But dominion just means essentially a control over animals, which because of our place, because of the influence we have in the world, that's true.
And you're right, the Bible doesn't say we have to eat animals. In fact, Paul in the New Testament says those who eat meat, they do that to the glory of God, so that's fine. Those who don't eat meat, they do that for the glory of God, that's fine also.
So it's a choice, it's open, right? And I would say that when we talk about dominion, we could have dominion in ways that are horrific. We could use animals for whatever we want, right?
Which I would not advocate
and,
for. Yep.
Well, but in the book it says we have dominion, right?
Yes, but it saes to be responsible. We're supposed to be stewards of God's creation.
But would you say that forcibly impregnating cows, breeding 80 billion animals, bolt gunning them, slitting their throats for burgers, would you say that that's steward?
That our current way of using animals is ideal. I would never make that argument. Obviously, it's not, right? There's plenty of things that people do that are terrible with animals. My argument isn't that we should be cruel to them or exploit them or use them in inappropriate ways. My argument would be that God has given us creation as a gift, and we're to use it responsibly.
But I would say that killing them prematurely, unnecessarily, is using them in cruel ways?
Yeah.
I think you say. I would argue that because you mentioned abuse, I was actually going to go into how, to me, killing is abusive, right? When I look at a sentient animal that has the will to live, that has babies, has a family, to then separate them or to then kill them, a fraction of their lifespan is cruel and unnecessary, right? Because when you're saying, well, it's fine to kill animals for food, but anything beyond just the killing, I disagree with, right? First of all, you should already be vegan because 95% of the animal products we get are factory farmed, and there's a lot of harm beyond just the killing. And then also, I would argue that kind of implies that we need to be doing what we're doing to animals when we don't, right? I've been vegan almost 7 years. We have grocery stores, we have food security. We do not need to be doing that anymore. So what I would argue, I understand, when you appeal to Christianity about how we do have dominion or we do have whatever, but I would argue is forget about the religion, just from your heart, just from seeing I don't know if you've ever watched slaughterhouse footage, but when you see these animals and they're scared and they get bolt gun and they get zapped to go down the kill chute, when you look at this footage and there's so much harm, what's the justification for that?
Well, again, I wouldn't advocate for things like that are cruel.
But how would we feed 8 billion? Like, if there's a demand for meat, right? How would we possibly do it without that? Right? We've got to forcibly impregnate. We've got to separate babies from mothers. We've got to kill on a mass scale to provide food. Right? That's like saying, I want enough food, like fruits and vegetables, but I only want to have backyard farms. It's not going to happen, right? We've got to crop and harvest at a large scale.
Potentially. I'm not well versed enough in that to say. I'd be hard pressed to say it would be impossible. I think it would take a lot of work. It's just like if you did want fruits and vegetables, everyone could have a backyard farm if we wanted to, right?
Well, not in cities.
Probably not, but there are some indoor. You know what I mean, though. There would probably be some creative solutions to minimize the exploitation.
Yeah, we can minimize it.
I don't think we'll ever get it perfect. We don't even treat humans perfectly, right? So the chances of us treating animals perfectly.
Well, here's the thing, and that's something we could segue into. So I think I'm above. What my logic has shown me, right? What logic and testing and pushing and has shown me is that a big reason why we don't treat other humans great, or we create inconsistency with our treatment of humans, is actually stems from what our relationship with other sentient animals. Right? If you look at any type of human that's been abused, whether it's African Americans, whether it's Jewish people, whether it's women, if you look at any oppressed group, they have been compared directly to animals, right? Whether it's slaves being compared to other animals, whether it's Jews being compared to rats, whether it's women being compared to female dogs, right? We compare them directly to animals because just because this other species of animal is different than us, we view them so much lesser, and then we apply that to the humans that we view as lesser as well, right?
I get your point.
I would say it's a bottom-up issue, not a top-down issue.